You ever get that feeling like you're completely adrift, where the person you thought you were has just vanished? Well, what if I told you there's actually a survival kit for that exact feeling, and it comes from a group of post-war philosophers? Let's get into it. Okay, picture this. You've actually done it. You've packed everything up and moved to a totally new country. Yeah, it's exciting. It's also terrifying, but it's something else too. It's like hitting a total reset button on who you are. I mean, think about it for a second. Everything that used to define you back home, your job title, all the people who knew your backstory, your inside jokes, all of it just, poof, evaporates. It's like the entire scaffolding that was holding up your personality has just been kicked out from under you. So you're left with this one huge, kind of dizzying question. When you strip all that other stuff away, who are you really? And look, this feeling, it's not just some personal crisis. It's actually the launching pad for a really deep philosophical journey. And what's so wild is that this feeling, this modern-day expat anxiety, it's almost the exact same thing a group of thinkers felt in Paris right after World War II. I mean, their entire world, all the old values, all the certainties, had just been blown to bits. They were starting from absolute zero. So what did they do? They didn't just sit around writing abstract theories. No, they were trying to build a real, practical survival guide for living in that wreckage. A guide for figuring out how to just be a person when all the old rules were gone. And the breakthrough? It actually happened in a cafe. So it's 1933, and the philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre is sipping an apricot cocktail with his buddy Raymond Aron. And Aron starts telling him about this whole new way of thinking, a philosophy that wasn't about these huge abstract concepts, but about real concrete experience, about this cocktail, the one right here on this table right now. This new tool had a name, phenomenology, and its goal sounds really simple on the surface. Just describe the world exactly as you experience it, before you start piling on all your cultural baggage and assumptions. In other words, it's all about learning to see the world again with fresh eyes. Okay, so how does this work in real life? Well, think about being in a foreign supermarket. You're just trying to buy milk, but you can't tell if it's milk or yogurt. All your usual mental shortcuts, they don't work. Phenomenology says, that's perfect. Bracket all those old assumptions. Just push them to the side for a minute and describe only what you actually see and experience. That's step one for figuring out a brand new reality. All right, so you've learned to see the world without your old filters. Now what? You're faced with an even bigger question. What are you supposed to do in this world? And this, right here, brings us to the thrilling and honestly terrifying heart of existentialism. And here it is. This is Sartre's most famous line. It sounds super academic, I know, but what it's saying is actually revolutionary, and it's incredibly personal. So what does it mean? Basically, that you aren't born with some kind of pre-programmed purpose or essence, the way a knife is made with the purpose of cutting. Nope, you just exist. You're here first, and then through all your choices, all your actions, that's how you create who you are. You literally are what you do. There's no instruction manual for being you. And this is the incredible paradox of it all. On one hand, it's totally exhilarating, right? It's this dizzying sense of infinite possibility. You can be anything. But on the other hand, my God, it's exhausting. Because there are no default settings, no pre-paved roads. You and you alone are responsible for inventing your own life every single day. Now, this is where Sartre's partner, the brilliant Simone de Beauvoir, comes in. She takes this big idea about freedom and applies it with surgical precision to what it means to be a woman. Her argument was that woman isn't just some biological given, it's a social construct. So you have Sartre saying, hey, we're all free to create ourselves. But Beauvoir pointed out that, well, hold on, society is constantly trying to force a prepackaged essence onto women. This is what you should be. This is how you should act. And that means their fight for freedom is a two-front battle. First, they have to fight to reject the identity society shoves on them. And only then can they even begin to create their own. I mean, this was a completely revolutionary way to use existentialism. But all this freedom, all this disorientation, it can be absolutely terrifying. And that terror, it can push people down some very, very different roads. This is where the story takes a darker turn. because it turns out not everyone used these new philosophical tools for the same purpose. So, on one path, you have the philosopher Martin Heidegger, brilliant, but also deeply problematic. He looked at the chaos of the modern world and saw it as a corruption of something pure. For him, being authentic meant ditching the city and getting back to a kind of rootedness in the soil, in old folk traditions, a deep, almost mystical connection to one specific place. Sartre and Beauvoir, they went in the complete opposite direction. They totally rejected that whole search for some pure, ancient being. For them, meaning wasn't hiding out in a forest or buried in the soil. It was right there in the messy, loud, complicated, everyday life of the city, in the cafe, on the street. In fact, for them, the mess was the whole point. And when you put these two paths side by side, the choice is just stark. Heidegger's path, with all its talk of authentic roots, slid way too easily into the horrific blood-and-soil nationalism of the Nazis. The big risk on Sartre's path? The anxiety of having too much freedom. But the risk of Heidegger's path was fascism. The stakes couldn't be higher. So let's bring it back to where we started, back to the cafe. Because the cafe isn't just a place where these stories happened. It's really a metaphor for a whole way of living and thinking. Think of the cafe as the perfect lab for building who you are. It's not your private home, but it's not the totally anonymous street either. It's that special in-between space. It's where your own private thoughts have to meet the public world, and where you have to decide moment by moment who you're going to be in front of other people. And really, that's the big takeaway here. Existentialism isn't about giving you easy answers. It's about giving you a set of powerful tools, or maybe even better, a set of powerful questions that any big life change is going to force you to ask anyway. It basically insists that you can't run away from the responsibility or the freedom of having to figure it all out for yourself. Which kind of leaves us with one last big thought. These philosophers, they were fighting against huge ideologies like fascism. Today, well, we're up against algorithms that know what we want before we do, and influencer cultures that sell us these neat, prepackaged identities. So in this new world, what does being radically free even look like? Is it still even possible? I think that's the question they've left for us.